Welcome back to West Texas View.
Welcome back to the West Texas View. I'm Johnny Lou Avery, and Carl Rippey, one of the K-West meteorologists, is so generous with his time that when I asked him to come back on and talk a little bit more about what was happening in the atmosphere, what was happening globally that affects us, well, he agreed to do that. And I'm particularly interested, now that we've had all of this things that have happened in Japan, how that is affecting us.
Well, you know, we got to go back to the earthquake. We think that since Japan is across the globe, overseas, that isn't going to affect us here. Well, the tectonic plates, all the plates that are actually under and in the depths of our surface and deep, clear down into the core, all of that is moving and adjusting. California gets a lot of quakes. There's other places that get a lot of quakes that are minor. There's some places that haven't gotten a quake in a while, and they're very, very
vulnerable to.
Yes, because they may be set on on basalt or some really hard surfaces, and those plates are just really jacked up against one another, and when they move, it really causes a lot of damage. So we're talking about that in terms of quakes that we're going to see. We've seen them in Chile, we've seen them over in Japan, we've seen them all over. We've had tsunamis. All of that really affects us in terms of especially the coastal areas, and we tend to think that we're isolated here in West Texas, and we are certainly protected in some regards, but in another respect, because of the atmosphere and because of what's happening overseas and in all parts of the globe, that water that becomes part of our system and rain, that's carried really across the world. Some of that stays up in the atmosphere, some of it doesn't, but we tend to get some of that weather.
We either get it from above or it washes around to us.
Yes, and it could be in the simplest form. It could just be from an airplane, let's say, taking off from Japan, flying through one of those plumes that are contaminated. Well, that's stirring that atmosphere up to a little bit of a degree, and it is bringing that over to wherever that plane lands. And it could be Newark, it could be JFK, it could be in Atlanta, it could be Chicago O'Hare, could be Denver, could be Seattle. I mean, there's a lot of international flights that originate out of LA as well. So really, any of those planes that are coming and going and all of that traffic that we have, that's why it just really becomes a concern, and we need to really watch out for that.
And when we have things on our Gulf that cause us so much problem, it doesn't mean that the rest of the country is immune from what's happening on our Gulf. And I'm really interested, though, in why we have hurricanes on our coast and other people have tornadoes in our land, and tornadoes aren't usually other parts of the country.
Well,
I mean, there's kind of a tornado alley, and why is it just here?
Well, we're talking about a whole university course and degree here. It has a lot to do with the ocean currents, and it has to do with how much heating we get during the course of the season. And again, that has, I mean, it's largely dependent on the Earth being tilted on its axis. You take a weather scenario and you just say this is a model of the Earth that's actually just flat. And you can probably just barely see that. This was a gift, and it isn't actually tilted on its axis, it's just something flat. Well, if it were just spinning like that, our weather wouldn't be as volatile. But the fact of the matter is our Earth is actually tilted on its axis, and it's spinning, and it's rotating around the sun. It's getting further and closer away from the sun as we go through the season. All of that adds to our weather, and all of that really boils down to the science of what we study on a daily basis, and we are here doing that for you, watching out for all that severe weather and keeping you appraised of our fire weather concerns and things that are going on, tornadoes, severe weather in terms of wind shear, high winds, whatever it might be.
But the advance made in studying weather has just been phenomenal in my lifetime. And knowing what's happening in the atmosphere and being able to explain it on television has really, really come a long, long way.
Yes, it has. And the advancement in any of the instrumentation that we use the radar advancement, the equipment that we have.
Yeah.
It is a constantly changing scenario, and we have all of those tools here at News West 9, here in the Storm Tracker 9 Weather Center. All of that high-tech stuff, the cutting-edge equipment to be able to follow those storms, both from a satellite view and from observations that are here on the ground, compiling that information and then building a forecast on a daily basis.
Well, how accurate? I know that when we were doing all this remodeling at the studio, that one of the things that we were going to have a lot more updated equipment even than we have had, and that would be so much more concentrated on what's happening right here in West Texas.
Right.
And so when you go to the Weather Channel and tune them in, they're looking at the broad thing all over the world, but we're looking at what's happening right here.
Right here. And we are super local right here. Our main goal is to survey that weather and then relay that information to you immediately when it happens. And there is definitely a lag time between what is happening here and what the Weather Channel is picking up. So you're not going to be able to get that immediate real-time information from anywhere else except here at our Weather Center at Storm Tracker 9.
And one of the things that I always think about when I'm watching the news is that sometimes you give me too much information. You know, you're talking about the highs and the lows, and I'm saying, I'm going on a picnic, just give me the bottom line.
Yeah.
But you're trying to tell me that even when you're giving me that weather, it could change in a minute because what's happening in the atmosphere can change in a minute.
Yes, it
so
can.
you're trying to give us a little lesson about why these things are happening and what we need to kind of watch for. And sometimes you just need to go and stand out and hold your finger up and look at the air and see which way the wind's blowing.
Yeah. Well, you know, I'm definitely guilty of giving too much information because there's so much going on and there's so many things to talk about.
And when you understand all of that, you want to tell everybody.
Yeah. So forgive me for that, and it's certainly something that I have worked on to be able to just give you those little steps at a time, the real-time temperatures, what our wind speeds are, and what it means to us in the next 12 hours. So that's certainly something that we have focused on here, and our other meteorologists here, they are much better at that than I am, and they're really on top of it and know how to relay that information. Tom's been here, Tom Keifer. He can tell you exactly what's happening right at that exact time, and you won't be overwhelmed with all the other information because he tells you what you need to know and what, as a community, we can do to safeguard from any of those dangers.
But, you know, I always think about, we're planning a wedding or we're planning a big event outdoors or something, and how the weather is the most important component in deciding plan A and plan B, and because you always have to have a backup plan when the weather's involved.
Right. And that's humbling for us because it is, you know, you want to know how to dress your kids before they go to school, or what you might wear, or even what you're going to drive, if you're going to take your motorcycle, if you're going to take your convertible, or if you're going to hop in your SUV, because we
or if you're going fishing, you got to know what the wind is.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, what we're saying is the weather rules us, and what we're doing is just trying to make a little sense out of it, and that's and so we've got some humor within our weather too. So we wanted to talk about that. We're coming back after the break, and we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the precautions you can take and how and get more back to the seasonal change, because we're coming up on summer really, really quickly. We'll see you in just a minute.
Stay tuned. West Texas View will be right back.